Today and on the radio live in Washington, D.C., Congressman Jeff Fortenberry. Congressman, you there?
Hey, Matt. Yes, good afternoon. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm sorry if there's a lot of background noise. I'm walking underneath the Capitol right now to actually take a vote, so the conversation may be a little choppy, so forgive me.
Can I tell you how to vote? Will you do it the way I want, or are you holding the cards tight to your chest? What are you voting on?
It's called study, listening to people, and making a good judgment and good conscience. That's what I'm doing.
Good for you. Hey, you took the trip to Normandy last week. Tell me about that.
Well, first of all, what an honor to be there on the 75th anniversary of D-Day, which was the epic battle which basically began to turn the tide of the Great War, World War II. At Omaha Beach, where the main bulk of fighting took place, where most of our losses took place, where American troops landed, along with troops on Utah Beach. There was intense fighting beginning at 6:30 in the morning. We have a beautiful cemetery there at Omaha Beach, which most Americans are, of course, familiar with, where over 9,300 of our war dead lay. And, just to walk among the orderly rows of white marbled crosses and Jewish stars of David takes the battle from just a historical fact, which is, of course, fascinating and interesting, to a poignant remembrance of real stories of real people who were fathers or sons or brothers or husbands. And then I even stopped at one marker that was someone who was not known, and as it says, known only to God.
You there, Congressman? I think we have lost the congressman. Yes, in the bowels of the Capitol building. He has been swallowed.
Matt, are you back?
I am.
Are you back?
Well, you're back. I've been here.
I'm sorry. I heard you say you lost me, but I'm back.
All right. I just figured you fell in a hole somewhere.
Well, there are a lot of pitfalls around here. So.
Good choice of words.
But let me just back up. We were there part of the 75th anniversary and as a congressional delegation, but we joined thousands of other Americans who were there to just remember and honor our war dead, and to be there at the cemetery and to walk among the orderly white crosses and Jewish stars of David is so poignant, a powerful reminder of so many young Americans who gave their lives and fought really against not just tyranny, but for the principles of civilization itself. So we had a number of activities that were surrounding that. President Trump spoke. President Macron of France spoke. Both gave beautiful, beautiful, moving speeches and honored the remaining war veterans who were there. All of the war veterans now are around 95 years old, and there was some that made the trip. And of course, they're dwindling in number. But they were of such good cheer, the ones I interacted with. One of the gentlemen I asked, where did you land? He was a paratrooper, the 101st Airborne. And he said, on the ground, with a little smile. And then it took him 4 hours to find anyone else. And when he found a commander of a unit, he said, where are we? And the commander said, I think we're in Europe. So there was so much confusion in the fog of battle, particularly the night before for our paratroopers. And one thing that I did was quite interesting. I went to the town of Sainte-Mère-Église, which is near Utah Beach. So I want to make two points of connection in Nebraska. At Sainte-Mère-Église at 4:30 in the morning, before our troops landed at 6:30, paratroopers actually took that town, and they raised the American flag above that town. And that American flag is still there today in the town hall. It's cared for, it's nurtured, it's a source of pride for the French people who live there. And in fact, all over the Normandy area, they fly both the French flag and American flag. It's just how grateful they continue to be. As one young Frenchman put it, we have a duty to memory. The other interesting thing of note is in that same area, General Roosevelt came through leading his troops, the oldest active general. He insisted on leading the troops through the breach at Utah Beach. He died a month later of a heart attack. He was ill, but he wanted to lead his troops in. In that breach right there is a replica of the Higgins boat, which, as President Eisenhower said, won the war for us. The Higgins boat was invented by Andrew Jackson Higgins, who is from Columbus, Nebraska. And a few years back, the good people of Columbus built a replica of that boat, just like they have at the beginning of the entryway of the town of Columbus in Nebraska, and donated it to the French people in honor of the great battle, and the Naval Museum there takes care of it. But people flock to the boat and the statues that depict the troops storming off the boat. They flock to it. I had heard that from other contacts I have in the area, that it has really helped transform the beach in making the history of the battle come alive. And I saw it myself. Just tourist after tourist, visitors wanting to see the boat, touch it, get on it. And of all things, I ran into Lincoln High School kids right there. They had a big group from Lincoln High School that was participating in the memory of the events that day, and ran into them. And that was just a lot of fun. So it was just so many multiple levels of meaning for me, including the fact that my own grandfather was killed near there a little bit later in November of 1944, but he was buried at that same town, Saint-Mère-Église, initially, and then was reinterred in Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C., where he is today. When I saw the mayor of the little French town, his name is Mayor Quitier, he remembered me. He said, I helped you with your grandfather because there were some details that we needed to figure out that were unclear about the nature of his death, that aren't clear in the records, and the mayor actually helped me piece a few things together. So for me, again, just a tremendous honor to be there and to thank the veterans, but to keep this continuity of remembrance alive, and to be a part of the ceremony at the cemetery was quite moving, especially the words of President Trump, which were echoed so beautifully by President Macron. And President Macron turned around and looked at the veterans, and he said, I bow to you. I mean, what a moment of poignant humility for a leader of a major country in the world to say that. And he said, we owe you more than medals. Basically, we owe you our eternal gratitude. We will never forget. So, again, to have a delegation there from the Congress I thought was important, but seeing the thousands of Americans and grateful French there, that's even more important.
Well, I tell you what, that's quite a opportunity you had to be there. That is something that people I've talked to that have gone over there that have just been, emotionally taken by everything. And, I got to tell you, I was talking with Tom Brewer before you were on, and I want to tell you something he told me. He told me when he came back from his Purple Heart honor flight, the flight was late. It was like midnight, and you were one of the people that were outside waiting to greet them, and on the streets of Omaha to greet them. And I thought that what a nice gesture for you. And I heard the governor was there too. And I think this is going to be something that's going to have to be important, that we don't let our kids forget what happened there. And a great show or a movie that I thought really brings it to life is Saving Private Ryan. That first long scene of the movie is something that if you're a young person and you don't understand what the World War II generation, what they went through, watch that. It is incredible.
It's incredible, and it is one of the hardest pieces of film that I have ever watched as well, because the real-life depiction is probably as close to reality as you can get in Hollywood of those men, their bravery, their courage, and at the same time, the reality of fear, the reality of death, the reality of destruction, of horrific destruction all around you. It was so beautifully depicted and poignantly depicted in that movie. And then when you go there and you look at what those men face, I mean, they're going across hundreds of yards of open beach, if they made it to the beach at all, because of the way in which the Germans had.
And Congressman Fortenberry fell into a hole again. So we'll see if we get him back. But why don't we go ahead and take a break now, Chris, and then we'll come back and see if we get reconnected. Matt Ennis back with you on Drive Time Lincoln, and I believe we were able to dig Congressman Fortenberry out of that hole he fell into. Are you back with us, Congressman?
I'm back, and I'm standing by a window now, so hopefully the reception will be good.
All right. Yes, you were making a point about, we were talking about Saving Private Ryan and just that first scene and how that, it's just incredible how it's very hard to watch, as you said, but it brings to life and to light what people who were not there how to somewhat understand what those boys went through. And understand, they were boys. These were 17, 18, 19-year-olds. That's who fights wars.
That's exactly right. Again, back to the movie, it's one of the harder scenes that I've ever watched. But when you do stand on water's edge at that beach and you look across the hundreds of yards of open terrain that they had to get through under intense German machine gun fire, under precision mortars, and then fight their way up a hillside laced with mines, with anti-personnel mines, and then try to take out hardened concrete bunkers. It's almost impossible to imagine, and that's why in the first wave that hit that particular sector by the cemetery, there were 96% casualties. We talked to several of the veterans again who had been there, and it was an amazing experience to be with them. And I asked one man, I said, "Do you remember it well?" He said, "I remember it too well." And it just tells you, again, the impact that this had on these very, very young men. I had a special opportunity as well. I found the graves of two brothers from Nebraska, Ludwig and Julius Pieper. You might have remembered the story. It was told in the news a little while back about how Ludwig and Julius were both killed in late June of 1944 in their boat, which ran supplies back and forth across the English Channel and ferried our casualties, our wounded. It hit a mine, and both brothers were killed. Ludwig was recovered and buried at Omaha Beach, but Julius was lost. His remains were missing. And it wasn't until just recently in 2017 that, due to the work of a high school student and a teacher in Nebraska working with our POW and MIA agency, that Julius's remains were identified, and now he's buried next to his brother in Omaha Cemetery. The 2 days before they died, his parents, the Pieper parents, they had received a letter from these brothers. They were twins, and they said, "Don't worry, we're all right. We are together." And then they were killed. And so now they're together again after nearly 75 years of being apart. So I stopped at their grave and did some reflection, because it's, again, one of these moments where the historical fascination of the battle, which loves history and, of course, are fascinated by the tactical details, comes alive. Real people who made real sacrifice. And to think that even to this day, some people have the possibility of being identified so there can be closure, to me is, again, the commitment of our government to do this, and that's a really good thing. The other dynamic that I think people need to know is our cemeteries their mission used to be solely centered on honoring our war dead, but the nature of that mission is shifting a little bit to remembrance, to telling the individual story, where they were from, who they were, the nature of their death. And I think that, again, is an important development in our understanding, an evolution of our understanding of how to not think in terms of aggregate war losses and the price that was paid, but the price that was paid by the individual and not only their sacrifice, but the ones left behind at home. And I just think that's a beautiful evolution of our thinking at the federal level and in policy as to how we not only honor our war dead and give them a respectful place of rest, but have a continuity of memory around real persons, real lives from real places.
No, that I agree. I agree 100% with that, Congressman. You know, I think about, we're fortunate that we will probably never, ever have to fight another war like that. But could you imagine? I spent 8 years in the Marine Corps. I never got sent over anywhere. Yet I sit there in awe in thinking of watching your friends or even your brother next to you being killed and having to keep going forward for the betterment of the mission. And it's just, I'm in awe in just what all of them were able to do with that.
Well, I think it behooves all of us to go back and listen to Patton's early speech to his troops when he talks about how, I know some of you are fearful of coming under fire, but when you see your buddy next to you, and he goes on and he's pretty descriptive, in his situation, you'll know what to do. So, Matt, thank you for your service, by the way, in the Marines. It tells me a lot about you, knowing that you served 8 years. And on behalf of, I'm sure, everyone listening, thank you very much. Before we have to go, could I change the subject for just one moment?
You got 1 minute.
Else?
1 minute.
Okay, two things. I just wrote my Fort report today on Normandy and just sent it out. Usually I get those out on Friday for people who are subscribed to it. So it came out today because we got back late Sunday night. And so I've tried to give a little bit of a summary of my experience there, so anyone's welcome to read it. Secondly, thanks for doing what you're doing here on the radio in the afternoon. I miss our friend Coby Mach. When he died a month or so ago, it was a shock to me. It was a shock to so many in the community because he had such a servant's heart, and he didn't shy away from hard things, but he always was respectful in the way in which he dealt with me and others to talk about the responsibility of leadership.
15 seconds, Congressman.
So thank you very much for filling in for Coby, and I just wanted to, since I haven't been on this program since he died, I wanted to pay my respect.
Well, thank you for being on here, Congressman. I appreciate it.